Authorities describe a case of lust, greed, and murder, whichever it is. The drama unfolded on January 23rd.
The quiet neighborhood of Brook Haven, Ohio, was the kind of place where people waved to each other from their porches, children rode bikes until dusk, and secrets were supposed to stay buried. It was a town where the biggest scandal usually involved an overgrown lawn or a minor disagreement at the PTA meeting. At least, that's what everyone thought, until one fateful night when it all unraveled in a gruesome spectacle no one would ever forget. Camilla Gray, 36, had always been the picture of perfection. She was the wife of Peter Gray, a well-liked insurance agent and the devoted mother of 2 young boys. Their home on Pine Street looked like something out of a postcard, with its white picket fence, manicured lawn, and carefully arranged flower beds. Camilla's smile was warm, her demeanor inviting, and her reputation spotless. But beneath the surface, she had been living a double life, one that would ultimately lead to an unspeakable tragedy.
That Robert Baker's guilty pleas and his truthful testimony will finally establish once and for all
the unlikely bond. The Grays' next-door neighbors, the Crawfords, were a younger family with a daughter, Rachel, who had just turned 18. Unlike most of her peers, Rachel was quiet, artistic, and often kept to herself. While other teenagers in town were busy with parties and social media, Rachel spent most of her time painting in the garage, which her parents had converted into a small art studio. Camilla had always been kind to Rachel, often stopping by to admire her artwork or share a quick chat while walking her dog. At first, it seemed harmless, neighborly even. But somewhere along the way, their conversations grew longer and their interactions more frequent. No one noticed the subtle signs at first. Camilla would linger outside the Crawford house, just a bit too long. Rachel's laughter would echo late into the night as they sat together on the back porch. What began as friendly chats soon evolved into something far more dangerous, a relationship shrouded in secrecy, passion, and risk. Camilla was captivated by Rachel's youthful energy, her artistic spirit, and her innocence. Rachel, in turn, was drawn to Camilla's confidence, her maturity, and the allure of something forbidden. It was a bond that defied boundaries and ignited something neither of them could control. The affair. The relationship escalated quickly. Text messages turned into stolen moments behind closed doors. Rachel began skipping school, while Camilla found more and more excuses to stay out late. Peter, who worked long hours, remained oblivious to the whispers of betrayal growing around him. But not everyone was blind to the peculiar dynamic. Lisa Baker, a nosy neighbor, and the town's most notorious gossip, had noticed Camilla sneaking into the Crawford garage more than once. She began piecing things together, though she had no concrete proof, just a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Everything came to a boiling point on a cold November evening. By then, Camilla had grown increasingly paranoid, terrified that someone would discover their secret. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed less concerned. In fact, she had begun pressuring Camilla to leave her husband, claiming she was tired of being a secret. Camilla resisted, fearing the fallout. Their arguments became more frequent, their once passionate affair now tainted with bitterness and desperation. That night, Peter came home earlier than usual. As he stepped inside, he immediately sensed that something was off. The house was eerily quiet except for the muffled sound of voices coming from the guest bedroom. His heart pounded as he followed the sound, his hands trembling as he reached for the doorknob. What he saw made his stomach drop. Camilla was sitting too close to Rachel on the edge of the bed. The air in the room was thick with something unspoken but undeniable. Peter didn't say a word. He just stared at them, his face pale and unreadable. Camilla scrambled to explain, but the truth hung heavy in the silence. Rachel didn't even try to hide it. Her defiant gaze said everything. Whatever facade they had maintained crumbled in that moment. The unraveling. The days that followed were a blur of tension and accusations. Peter demanded answers, but none came. When he finally confronted the Crawfords, Rachel's parents were horrified. They banned Rachel from seeing Camilla and even considered moving away. But by then, the damage had already been done. Rachel felt betrayed, by Camila, by her parents, by herself. Her once vibrant paintings turned dark and chaotic, mirroring the storm inside her. Camila, too, was unraveling. Her marriage was falling apart. Her reputation was in shreds, but despite everything, she couldn't let Rachel go. They began meeting in secret again, defying the Crawfords' warnings. They would rendezvous in the park late at night, whispering promises they could never keep. It was a toxic cycle neither could escape, and it was only a matter of time before it all erupted. The murder. On the night everything changed, Peter came home to an empty house. Camila had told him she was running errands, but hours passed and she never returned. Frustrated, he decided to confront Rachel's parents again. As he approached their house, he noticed something strange. The garage light was flickering, and the door was slightly ajar. From inside, the faint sound of arguing drifted out. Peter pushed the door open and stepped into a scene that would haunt him forever. Camila and Rachel stood in the center of the room, their faces twisted in fury. Between them lay a broken bottle, its jagged edges glinting under the dim light. Rachel was screaming, accusing Camila of lying to her and of using her. Camila begged her to calm down, but Rachel wouldn't listen. And then, in a blur of motion, Rachel lunged for the bottle. Before anyone could stop her, she struck. Peter froze as Camila crumpled to the ground, blood pooling beneath her. Rachel dropped the bottle, her hands trembling as she realized what she had done. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to." The Crawfords arrived moments later, drawn by the commotion. Rachel's mother let out a piercing scream, while her father grabbed the phone to call 911. Peter sat motionless, cradling Camila's lifeless body as sirens wailed in the distance. The aftermath. When the police arrived, the story unfolded in disjointed fragments. Rachel confessed immediately, unable to look anyone in the eye. She was arrested on the spot. Her trial was swift but brutal. The prosecution painted her as an unhinged teenager who had let jealousy spiral into violence. The defense argued that Camila had manipulated Rachel and that she had taken advantage of her vulnerability. In the end, the evidence was too overwhelming. A series of text messages Rachel had sent in the weeks leading up to the murder sealed her fate. "You said you loved me. You promised me everything. If I can't have you, no one will." The jury deliberated for only a few hours before reaching a verdict: guilt. Rachel Crawford, just 18 years old, was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The shadows of Brook Haven. Brook Haven was never the same after that night. The gray house was eventually sold, its new occupants blissfully unaware of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The Crawfords moved away, their names whispered with a mix of pity and disdain. But even as the years passed, the town never forgot. Rumors swirled about Peter. Some claimed he had known about the affair long before that night. Others whispered that he had been seen lurking near the Crawford house, watching, waiting. Then there was the break-in. Just weeks after Rachel was sent to prison, someone broke into the Crawford home. Nothing valuable was stolen, but Rachel's paintings. All of them had been slashed to ribbons. Some thought it was a random act of vandalism. Others weren't so sure. Years later, Rachel received a letter in her prison cell. It was unsigned, written in shaky handwriting. "You destroyed everything. You took her away, but she'll never truly be gone. I see her everywhere, in the mirror, in my dreams. You will too." Rachel's hands trembled as she read the words. She knew who had sent it. Peter Gray would never forgive her. And somehow, that was more terrifying than any prison sentence.